Section 12 of Great Pirate Stories. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Patrick McAfee. Great Pirate Stories by Various, edited by Joseph Louis French. Section 12, Narrative of the Capture of the Ship Derby, 1735. Captain Anselme. I fell in with the land of Madagascar, the latitude of about 24 degrees 13 minutes north, and some time before I had made it, I met with nothing but light airs of winds and calms, and continued so long. My people dropping down with the scurvy, I took a small still that I had and distilled salt water into fresh. I allowed them as much peas and flour as they could eat, that they might not eat any salt provision, though I boiled it in fresh water. I had been very liberal with my fresh provision in my passage to my people, and the passage so long that I had hardly any left, and that only a few fowls, and myself and officers too had been much out of order. At last, being got to the northward of Augustin Bay, seeing my poor people fall down so very fast, it gave me very great concern for them, but still was willing in hopes of change of wind for Johanna. But the small airs trifled with me, and what there were northerly, a current settling to the southward, that what to do I could not well tell. To go into Augustin Bay I was very unwilling. I had 2 boats came off to me, the people talking tolerable good English. At last my doctor, Sharp, told me there were above 30 people down with the scurvy, and all the rest. Even some of the petty officers were touched with the same. If I did not soon put into port, I plainly found I should have been in a bad condition for men. I consulted with my officers to go into Augustin Bay, and we agreed and bore away for it. Soon after the wind came southerly, and I bore away for Johanna. A fine passage I had, and anchored the next day about 4 in the afternoon, being September 13th. I thank God I brought all my people in alive, and that inasmuch as I can say of a good many of them, I had a tent made ashore for them, and supplied them all that ever I could, and the doctors assisting with everything in their way for their speedy recovery. After I had been here a fortnight, the winds in the daytime set in very fresh from the north-northwest to the north-northeast. Finding the people recover so very slowly, what to do I could not tell. To go out with my people as bad as when they came in, I was not willing, but resolved to have patience 1 week more. I consulted with Mr. Rogers, my chief mate, and told him that we must consider the condition of the people, and how we met the winds and currents before we came in. The people of the island told me that this was about the time of year for the northerly winds and southerly currents, and I told them I thought it better to trim all our casks and fill what water we could, fearing of a long passage, if our stay was a little longer. Mr. Rogers was of my opinion. This, I must say, I found the cask not so well used in the hold as they ought to have been, which caused the coopers more work. Neither did I make a little noise about it, because I had more words with my chief and second mate about my third and fourth mate than anything else. Having all my water aboard, about 80 ton, 25 head of oxen, etc., I sailed the 13th of October, with several of my men not recovered. Some I buried at Johanna, and some after, to the number of 10, or thereabouts. Having a fine gale, I made all the sail I could, except studding sails, which I thought needless.
The wind veered to the northward, and I was resolved to make the Malabar course as soon as possible, for the advantage of the land and sea winds. I had one passenger aboard, a sad, troublesome, wicked fellow, whose behavior was so bad that I could hardly forbear using him ill. I forbid my officers keeping company with him, but Mr. B would do it at all events. I turned him once off the quarter deck for being with him there, yet that did not avail. I came out one night about half an hour past 10, my second mate's watch, and this B's turn to sleep, and seeing a light in his cabin, I sent Mr. Cudden, the second mate, to him, to know how he would be able to sit up one watch and keep his own. Upon this, B came up halfway the steerage ladder with his pipe in his hand, and talked to me very pertly, and that was not the first time. This put me into a passion, to be so talked to by a boy, that I did dismiss him for 2 or 3 days, and then restated him, which was more than he deserved, for keeping company with him for whom the worst of names is good enough, and those who recommended him to his commission. B was told of this by Mr. Rogers, by my orders, and I told him of it on the quarter deck, and told him at the same time I was resolved to tell the gentlemen at home of him, and asked him what he imagined they would think of him for keeping such swearing, drunken company. This was before I dismissed him. Before I came in with the land, hearing much talk of Angria by Captain Scarlett and Mr. Rogers, and of his great force, for I had very little notion of him before, I took care to put the ship in a proper posture of defense, powder chests on the quarter deck, poop and forecastle, a puncheon filled with water in the maintop, a hogshead in the foretop, and a barrel in the mizzen-top, all filled with water. Chests with good coverings in the tops for granado shells, all the small arms with 50 new ones in readiness. My ship being too deep to get the gun room's ports open, as the gunner informed me, the ship sending, and the sea washing above the tops of the ports, I got those guns into the great cabin, quarter bills over the guns, the rewards and close quarters, etc., at the mizzenmast, shot lockers and shot in their proper station, plugs for shot holes, and everything that I could think of, and gave particular orders to my gunner, carpenter, and boatswain to have everything in their way in readiness, the 2 lower yards flung with the top chains. Not being easy in my mind about these gun room stern ports, I sent Mr. Rogers, it being smooth water, to open one of the gun room stern ports to see if we could, on occasion, get guns out there, but he brought me word it could not be done with safety, the ship being so deep. A few days before I made the land, the winds used to veer and haul, that offing in an hour, I could hardly up from east-northeast to southeast, but the winds chiefly kept to the northward. I was very desirous to make the land, not knowing how far the southwest currents might set me to the westward. At noon, being December 12th, I made the land of Goa, in the latitude of 15 degrees north. My chief mate wanted me to go into Goa, but I was resolved not, but to make the best of my way for Bombay. The next morning, having a fine 6-knot gale, about 9 o'clock, Mr. Rogers told me he saw Garia, and desired me to haul further offshore, and said if Angria and his grabs should see us in his river, he would send them out after us. I asked him if his grabs came out of sight of land. He told me they were afraid to do that, fearing the Bombay vessels should get between them and the shore, and keep them out of their port.